send it to you. Hey everyone, how's it going? I have a special guest on today, Tyler of Journey to Truth. And he's got an amazing book out that he came out with recently, and I'd love to get everyone to start knowing about it so they can pick up a copy. So can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? I'm going to send you the link to this video in the Facebook.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on. This is, I've been a long time coming. I know we've been trying to get a hold of each other, and here we are finally. So I'm very grateful to be here and grateful for the opportunity. So thank you for that. And I'll share this out in a minute, but I'm host of Journey to Truth podcast. Aaron and I started it in February of 2019, I think, and barely missed a week since then. And I mean that, like, we've been, I guess the one thing we've been consistent with is consistency. It's important to us, it's like quality over quantity and consistency. I think that's like the key to success, right? We only do one episode a week, maybe two sometimes. And then because we don't want to burn ourselves out or the audience. And then we just been consistent with it. It just never miss a week unless we had to. And if we had to, we had something pre-recorded. So it's just like this well-oiled machine. And we've been doing that for 6 years now. And it's pretty amazing. It's turned into documentaries and webinars and conferences and books and all kinds of stuff. So much more than just a podcast. And, it's just, it's been an awakening journey for us as well as the audience. We've been learning along the way. So that's my favorite part. It's not like we even knew what we were doing. We were just, we were complete amateurs, had no expectations, and we just kind of hit the ground running, and the universe took the wheel from there, and we're just along for the ride. But it's pretty amazing that we even ended up, we're still here doing this, and it seems to be still no resistance. It just, opportunities keep opening up. So we know we're on the right path, and we just cover all topics: disclosure, awakening, alternative health, paranormal, spirituality. I mean, you name it, right? Government cover-ups, corruption, secret space programs. There's nothing that we won't touch. That's what makes it good. I think we keep it diverse, and we just have intelligent conversations. We don't approach it from a skeptical standpoint. We just, we understand that this stuff exists. So when we interview somebody, we don't have to ask them the hard questions as if it were an interrogation. We can go deeper into the subject matter and explore like what's actually going on with this stuff. And we get into stuff like parallel realities and alternate timelines and other dimensions. And that's something that my book covers in great detail, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's who I am, and I'm an experiencer myself. I've had a number of experiences, which is kind of what prompted me to write the book. And I'm sitting on all these things I don't get to talk about much because I'm always interviewing people. So I've been writing for a few years now, and it finally got to a point where it's like, I just need to put this stuff out or I'll never stop writing. So that's where we are.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, and can you give us a little bit of an outline of what people can expect in your book, and then we can go into more intrigue into the topics, and people can ask you questions in the chat. So feel free to, guys.
Yeah, let me share this link real quick on my Facebook too. But the book basically, it's like, it starts off going through my awakening, like awakening through adversity, right? It was all very negative stuff that started happening to me at first that kind of broke me out of my shell, broke me out of the illusion, out of the trance I was under, that everybody's under before you go through that awakening. And it was through the darkness that I found the light. And it was, all this negative, dark stuff was happening to me. And at some point I was like, okay, well, if this darkness exists and I'm experiencing it in real time, then there has to be an opposing force. There has to be a light side to this. And it just sent me down this path that I've never returned, down this rabbit hole I've never came out of. And I don't think you can ever come out of the rabbit hole. I feel like it just keeps going and going, and like the awakening never stops. You're not just gonna like hit a point. You're not gonna find the end of the internet and be like, okay, I'm awake. That's actually not how it is at all. The more you uncover, the more layers are revealed, and it's like a never-ending onion, right? And there's layers and layers, and it's not just an awakening; it's a path of self-discovery. It's a healing journey, and the book started. My whole journey started off. It was like trial by fire. It was awakening through adversity, and basically, I had to come to the conclusion that I was in the middle of dream warfare. It sounds silly, but the CIA actually has documents out now that they released in 2017 that actually prove that. They talk about dream warfare and how they can literally send people after you in your dreams. And it sounds silly, but they've figured it out, and the documents are there to prove it. And other psionic abilities as far as like dream walking and tracking the souls through reincarnation and all that stuff, which is I talk about in my book. And turns out that it's not even a theory anymore because we have the documents online, but people read it and still think it's ridiculous because the documents were just kind of quietly released, right? They were never made like there was no public announcement about it. So, and there was 13 million pages, literally. So who's going to actually go through all that? So, that was 2017. We're in 2025 now. And some people, have devoted a lot of time to going through these documents. And now we're uncovering stuff that, you would have just thumbed through because it's so overwhelming at first. And I think that's intentional. Like, who has time to just hang up everything that's going on in their life and look through these documents that just were, just quietly slipped into the internet. So I like that they're there because it proves a lot of my experiences. But that's where the book starts, and then it takes me into the revelation that this is a multi-dimensional reality, and like we explore the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, and we get into parallel universes and parallel lives and the other dimensions. I mean, it's pretty in depth, and I break down these theories and I provide my own personal experiences that led me to these conclusions, along with corroborating research. And it's a tall order. It's a 3-part book with an interlude. I mean, it's quite a journey, but I've been spending quite some time, putting it together, so it's just right. And so far, the feedback's been amazing, and I can't be happier about the results so far. It's only been like 2 weeks since it's been out.
Nice. So yeah, and we can go piece by piece in part of the book in the revelations of the different things people can awaken to. So you started with dream warfare and the multidimensionality of the dreaming, at least in my perception as I go into psionic abilities in the Psionic League. We have a dreaming body, we have these biophotons we emit, and they go to like dream realms, and there's like a whole layer of different worlds that are inhabited by various beings, and then we can create these realms ourselves. We can have mutual dreaming. There's like a war of invasion between some of the realms. A lot of the realms layer over top cities, and we're conscious to create them, or the Aurora Borealis. And that besides the dream realms, we can also experience the astral, as well as other timelines, other realities. Sometimes I've had dreams that last for like months and years, and it's so realistic with the physics of it that's like, well, that doesn't seem like a dream. And you go a little bit more into that for people that like have that kind of experience, so that you can trigger them to like, oh, what the keys might be in your book.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not. It's so easy for somebody who hasn't experienced this to write it off as delusional, hallucination, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, and people out there, even in the community who've been in this for years, are still trying to tell people that it's all delusion, and it's very interesting that that's the conclusion they've come to after this long. I feel like it's just there's a resistance there because it really forces you to think outside the box in ways that you like. You if you think you're outside the box, then you're not outside the box. Like it's this a really interesting thing. It's because you like I've said in the past, like you got to go back to the drawing board only to find out that there's another drawing board. Like it just never ends. You never actually get to a final conclusion to where you can be an authority on a subject, right? Because there's always somebody else out there and something else out there that knows more and has experienced more, and you're just learning. You have to have the humility to self-correct and just be open-minded enough to explore these concepts without ridiculing others for their experiences, which I see happen a lot, and it's happened to me even upon the release of this book. There's been some attacks already that they're just unfounded. It doesn't even make sense, but it's like, well, the information has to be threatening on some level, you know. So it's very interesting. But as far as like, I would wake up sometimes. Not everything comes through dream time. Also, some of these are just memories that just show up. Like you're just like, I don't know how they're just suddenly there, but they're there. And then other times it's very clearly like it happens during the dream state, but you wake up and it was nothing. It was unlike any dream you've had in your entire life. It was so real that I literally would draw pictures and write pages. I mean, it had very, very specific, vivid details. And actually, the more I would sit with it, the more would become clear. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that too, and then that too, and like it's like revisiting a memory from your childhood. And the more you sit with it, you start remembering more. That's how I know it's not just a regular dream, because dreams, like a normal typical dream, like everything's morphing and changing. You're talking to your friend, and all of a sudden your friend is your mom, and then you're in the kitchen, then you're in a park. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the dream. But in these other memories, like that's not happening whatsoever in any capacity. It's like you're actually somewhere else, and you retain the memory in such a way to where it's like it just happened right now. And that's why like people are like, how do you remember this stuff from so long ago? It's not like, it's like you can write a whole journal about your day yesterday, but you can't write a whole journal about your 10th birthday, right? Because it's harder to remember. This stuff, it literally, when the memories come back, it's as if it just happened yesterday, because that's how it is. So it's a fresh memory. It might even be from the past, but it's fresh because somehow that timeline collapsed and that memory is rehoming, or whatever the case is bleeding through, and you're getting it in real time in some capacity. I'm not sure how it works. You know, there's many theories on that. So, I mean, I can't ignore the fact that it's happening, and you can start writing and put it into a book like I did and call it Tales from Another Timeline, and just let people come to their own conclusions. And I'm very persistent along the way. I'm like, I'm not asking anyone to believe this. I encourage them throughout the book to just drop into their heart and their intuition, and just feel and pay attention to how their body responds to the information when they're reading it, and how it makes them feel. And I let them come to their own conclusions. And not at any point in the book am I telling anyone this is the way it is. You know, it's just my experiences and corroborating research to get them to open their mind and maybe look at things through a new lens. And that's kind of the idea. I think that's the approach everyone should really have, because to think that anyone could have the ultimate truth is kind of silly at this point.
I agree. And I'd love to hear some of these alternate timeline tales, if you will. Like I have actually quite a few of these temporal dilated, like no way this could be compressed into a single night kind of dream. This one time after I went on a trip to Scotland, the night before I left, I dreamt like what seemed like for months, and it I was in the perception that I was like just like a regular thing. I was there. It wasn't a dream. It's like the reality, and I was like a group of friends that had superhuman abilities, and it appeared like it was a whole nother timeline where the government was chasing and arresting and more totalitarian, and they were capturing people with unique abilities, and we were on the run from them. And they captured a bunch of our friends, so we ended up breaking into a facility to bust them out. And then there was a various times of like collaborating, having fun, little parties in secret warehouses and bases that we made, and even swimming and being able to breathe underwater, and telekinesis and levitation. It was really cool, and it just like felt like it was just natural, and been there for years. And I felt the emotion of like losing friends and people dying and other. It's like wake up from it, I was like, what the hell? So do you have? Would you like to share some of the things so it might trigger in people, and then they them get your book to trigger more?
Yeah, of course. And I want to address a comment that came through. Somebody said, Jason said, wait, so 2 more parts are coming out? No, so there's 3 parts. The book is divided into 3 parts with an interlude. And it was the only way I could figure out how to, tell everything and connect the dots without, making it all just mashed together. It just helps your mind categorize everything as you're reading it, and it helps you to process the information. So, like I said, the first part of the book kind of goes through, it's really hard to put into words. This stuff, let's talk about how hard it is to write about this stuff in a digestible manner, right? Because when you're trying to break down timelines and parallel realities and time travel and like quantum mechanics and all these things that you need to understand for this information to even land, right? It's very difficult to put into words, and trying to explain to somebody time dilation and dimensional shift technology and all these things, jump rooms and density chambers and everything that comes along with it. If you don't have a foundation of that knowledge, then it's just going to fall on deaf ears, I think. So the book is it's like a tall order. Like I said, it's my attempt to explain this stuff at the same time share the experience. So whenever they're reading the experience, they have some foundation of the information and knowledge that even helps them understand it. Jason said, does Tyler know if Larry, the guy who tried to recruit, has read it? No, I have no idea. I'm not actually in contact with Larry right now, but I have no idea if he's read it. Anyway, so you were asking like, what's an example of one of these other experiences, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just start off with like the first chapter from part 2. So technically the middle of the book, part 2, is Tales from Another Timeline. That's like the title of the book, but it's really the middle of the book, And I share this memory I have working for this, what I would call Time Corporation. I mean, I don't have a name for the actual company or organization, but I do know where I was stationed. I was stationed at Falcon Air Force Base. At the time, I didn't know Falcon Air Force Base was a thing. After I had this memory, I went and looked it up, and I found it online. But it had been changed. It changed its name to Schriever Space Force Base whenever the Space Force was rolled out. So it was at one point Falcon Air Force Base, which I found interesting. And that's where I was stationed. And I remember specifically being in the engineering department in that building. And that building in particular had an elevator that went underground that led to all these labs, which led to a maglev train, tunnel network that led to an underground city, which is where myself and all the scientists were housed with their families. And the scientists and basically had been like everybody, from my understanding, had been either recruited or abducted from the surface world, right? And they were like kind of memory wiped of their previous lives on the surface. And I know for a fact the scientists were, and they were basically just like blank slated and brought down into these programs to reverse engineer this time travel tech. And they were, they had families and kids, and we all lived in like this cavern, like this underground city. And they had the wife and kids were the incentive to work. You gotta have something to come home to, right? So it was a very fascinating situation to understand. Like, okay, so I was part of, like, I had been in the program since I was a child, and there were, they were kind of like Andrew Bishago's testimony. If you're familiar with him, they were using children to like kind of test out these different time travel technologies and modalities. And unfortunately, a lot of children lost their lives in the experimental phase, and some of us made it. And I just happened to be in this memory one of the ones who made it. And We were effectively a team of chrononauts, and we were run by a private corporation. I don't even know the name of it, and it was operating out of Falcon Air Force Base, but it didn't really have any ties to the military, and effectively on the surface. It wouldn't. There's nothing in the books that would say that this was happening, right? And what we were doing, our whole primary mission was to go back, and they would send us on these missions back in time to look for artifacts, particularly anything to do with time travel, time tech, and sometimes crystal artifacts like the one that was found at the Wingmakers Ancient Arrow site. Yeah, that's very interesting. What is that?
This is a cube we found in Mexico. It's like stone, and it glows when UV light surrounds it, and it's got ETs on it. Let's see. But yeah, these are like powerful. There's all these artifacts around the planet for people to still uncover. This one has a spirit in it. It's crazy powerful. Like, it had a lot of.
It looks fairly light. Like, it doesn't look very heavy.
Yeah, this one's lighter. It's got a little bit of hollowness to it. We got also a crystal one. That's heavy as fuck, though.
Right. Interesting.
But this one, like, it talks to me. As soon as I picked it up today, it like blasted my ear, and it's like requesting different types of energy so they can gain a generator for them.
Right.
But there's crazy artifacts around the planet. So I believe in everything you're saying.
Yeah, so and the whole thing was we were sent back, and we would go to South America a lot to look for these artifacts, and we found this crystal in one of these ancient sites, and that it had been apparently the sole, that artifact was the sole reason the whole project was greenlit in the first place. Like, they were looking for something very particular. And we were just like tirelessly being sent on these missions until we found it. And anything else we could bring back was amazing. And it was really interesting too. They wouldn't.
What did the artifact look like?
It was just literally it looked like like it was a green crystal, like kind of like a quartz, like a double terminated crystal, but it had like other multi-dimensional components to it. I don't even know how to describe it. It looked very insignificant. You would not think it was anything. Apparently, like, it was very similar to, if you've ever seen the picture of the crystal artifact that was found outside of the Wingmakers caves. It just looked, people just think it was a crystal, but it actually was a technology, which that's how most of this stuff is. And there is components to these artifacts in other dimensions that we can't even perceive. But with that knowledge, you can unlock it. So we were. It was interesting is there was like a cave network, like an ancient cave network, and we would always have to basically send the artifacts back through the cave, like a portal in the cave, and we can never come back. We can never make the jump back with the artifact on our body in case something happened to us. The artifact was more important. Like, we were just expendable, right? And so the artifact would be literally sent back through this portal in this cave, which would be activated by literally touching the wall, and like it was like a natural ancient portal system, and it would be activated with a key phrase. Like, you would just speak this ancient language, and it would literally activate. Like, a team of scientists could spend 10 years in that cave and not know that it's a portal, because they just don't have the knowledge that it's not necessarily just a cave. You have to have a very specific set of instructions to even perceive this type of reality, right? And the actual portal itself, like the way I understood it, like the portal, you would actually travel in like a parallel dimension, like a parallel Earth. It was this very confusing thing. Like, the parallel Earth, like the portal was still existing because the collective consciousness in that reality understood that the portal network existed. So their beliefs created a reality where the portal could exist. So it would like have to travel over there before it could come back here, and where there would be a team of scientists waiting in the future. And then they would take the artifact. And this artifact in this case was it was some sort of, I don't know what it was, but they were trying to create what I understand now to be like a timeline deviation. And these people were the cabal essentially that I was working for. And they like, I would sit in on their think tanks, and they were literally like, they had these depopulation agendas. And it was just very interesting to sit there. And I started feeling guilty once we brought this artifact back, to even understand that it was me and my team, the one that retrieved it. And here we were none the wiser that they were looking for it so they can literally use it to create this, like, alter the timeline to wipe out a large number of people. And I was getting super sick to my stomach, and I knew, like, I had to sabotage the plans in some capacity, right? So that's what I did. And like, there's just at least I attempted to. And I ended up trying to. So all the scientists, I knew this from sitting in the meetings. All the scientists, they had a chip in their forehead, and they're right in their pineal gland, looked like a watch battery, and it would suppress the memory, right? And it would not only suppress the memory, but it would allow them to monitor the scientist, to basically even track their thoughts in some cases, and all the above. It was just, but mainly it was to keep them from remembering their previous identity on the surface that they had been abducted from. It's like they were brought through the program on the surface, and then they were basically brought into the underground, and they had no recollection of the surface world anymore. Like, they literally didn't know that there was like a surface reality, because we were so far underground. And I mean, it's pretty fucked up. But the chrononauts, like us, they couldn't mind wipe us, because they relied on our memory, our intel for their entire mission. Our intel was the entire mission. So anything we would bring back. So we were fortunate enough to have like memory and recollection of the surface world and like everything that was going on. And it was like very important to them that we actually remained sharp. And they would have us do like these brain games and like these neurological, like, weekly things they would have us do, just to like keep us sharp. And yeah, so I eventually tried to unlock one of this scientist. I thought I could tell him. Once I realized what was going on, I was like, well, somebody else has to know. And I tried to explain to this guy. His name was Anthony. It was just like one of the scientists that I had made friends with in passing. I didn't really know him that well, but I knew him enough to like I wonder if I could get through to this guy. But it was like talking to a brick wall. Like, that whatever the implant was doing, it was like just going right over his head. So there's more to the story. It's a lot. It's in the book. It's all in great detail in the book. But that's one example of like a memory I have that, it started off as like fragments, and then the more I sat with it and started writing, and like it was just like flooding back in, and like more and more and more was becoming clear down to very specific details. So that's part of the reason why I eventually wanted to write a book, because I could come out as some whistleblower, some insider, but that's not what I'm claiming to be. I just have these memories that don't have a place in this reality, and I'm not claiming to be anybody special. And they might not even be a real memory from a real place. It could be a total fabrication. Who knows? I'm not claiming anything, but I'm just claiming that, hey, I have these memories that don't fit. Here they are, and maybe somebody will read that and it'll triggers or ring a bell or trigger something within somebody else.
I hear this all the time. So like in a psychically we go deep into this kind of thing, timeline stuff. I read people's timelines, targeted individuals. I heal. A lot of the things that are targeting people end up being the military or some ET groups and underground bases.
Right.
And that reminds me of a bunch of the stuff with Montauk in that I keep reading up with clients, and they're assholes. They just keep trying to abduct people, program them, abuse them, and steal their abilities, and then put a big alter control matrix around their soul and alters to then make it usable, and then either make clones of them or take them temporal dilation from like Project Pegasus, Tesla portal tunnel technology, and then
right.
reverse. Bring them back to their holographic imprint of when they took them. So it's like they never left, with the programmed alter locked away, and
Right.
trying not to bring it out. And yeah, constant assholes, constantly trying to breach into other timelines, other alternate realities, go back and forth in time, anchor themselves to keep going because they are like on a lit fuse. They are stealing authority, and then all these other groups are uncreating and then like collapsing their timelines, and then, so
Right.
they keep trying to make more. And there's different versions of them because they branch off from each other, and then they fight each other quite a bit.
It's an it's a temporal war the likes of what anybody can really imagine. I don't think that like it's so similar to a sci-fi movie, even beyond a sci-fi movie. Like we're talking like a multi-dimensional, like dimensional politics. Like I don't even know how to describe it, but I think it's a reality. And like we interviewed Dan Cooper, and he was talking about temporal management command that exists out of Fort Bragg and in North Carolina. And he said it's a massive underground laboratory there, a deep underground military base with thousands of scientists. And he said temporal management command, it's a faction of the Navy essentially, and their whole purpose is to go back in time and correct timeline deviations that were made by dark groups. You know, the groups that are trying to alter the timeline for their agendas. Like there's this team that comes in behind them and like tries to fix the deviation, but he said it they can't just go and like change it back. They have to like slowly nudge it back so it doesn't create like a detrimental effect or a paradox or whatever the case may be. But he said it would have to like they would have to go back to different points in time and make subtle nudges until the timeline's back on track. And then there's teams everywhere constantly doing this, apparently. And then there's other teams that like are affecting the timeline without even understanding that they're affecting the timeline just by not having the knowledge of the technology that they're utilizing. And they're creating like these holes and these tears in space time and these dimensional rifts just by experimenting haphazardly with this technology. And so anytime something like that happens, you know, they're creating Mandela effects and like things that they can't even figure out like how they'll see the change, but to figure out where the change occurred is the hard part, right? And if you actually seen the latest Indiana Jones movie, The Dial of Destiny, that movie is about Indiana Jones and Warner von Braun. He's not named Warner von Braun in the movie, but if you read the movie plot, like what it's about, that antagonist is literally Warner von Braun's character. And in the movie, guess what he is? He's a time traveler. Warner von Braun is a time traveler, a time runner, like described in the Sands of Times books with the hat and the watch and everything. And they're after this dial of destiny, which what is the dial of destiny? It allows them to detect where a jump is going to occur ahead of time. Like somehow, because time is, we don't understand time. So the dial of destiny allows them to see where the jump is going to occur, so they can go and like preemptively strike, right? Or at least know where the change is going to occur in the timeline. That movie, I was beside myself watching that movie. I was like, holy shit, this is a straight up true story about time travel and temporal deviations and what these groups, in particular the Germans and Warner von Braun, were involved in during World War II. And it has everything to do with ancient artifacts and these ancient sites. And I mean, it's all a reality that we're just supposed to think is science fiction.
Oh, I love that you're going into this topic, and you say so eloquently. I've been waiting for somebody to go deeper into time that I can have a conversation with. So thank you for going down these rabbit holes.
Of course.
Hi, guy. So this topic goes into what we in the Sonic League go into teaching consciousness timeline travel. And like there's a mystery school that anyone can go through. It's like you're trying to impress the time itself and the source of time, the gods of time, the founders of time, the time authorities in general. So they see you as worthy, and then they grant you more and more abilities, and then it starts with like being able to send healings back and forth in time in your timeline, being able to send it to your past lives, changing them from what isn't super set in stone. Usually the wounds that happen from time incursions to begin with. Then being able to stop timeline incursions, sense them, timeline sight, being able to perceive the tree of light of time and how it branches off into different spectrums of choice points. The alternate timelines were fun in being able to practice on them, like all these catastrophe timelines, like nuclear fallout, zombies, alien invasion, other things that you can practice on, where you can influence a version of yourself to make a better decision. So if they're dead, you can go back to before they died. Oh, instead of going right, turn left, and don't end up in that alleyway where there's a bunch of zombies or something.
Right.
And you can then influence it to have a greater strategy and standpoint in influence, and then that goes into remote influence, and then being able to earn more abilities in healing and resolving other people's timelines, healing paradoxes, resolving. You get more and more authority and seeing what is allowed to be changed by like this giant hairball of the timeline war is what you're going into. Any of that resonate?
Oh yeah, 100. I mean, absolutely. I mean, you're kind of filling in blanks for me too. I feel like this is, new territory. I know it's new territory for me. It's something I've been exploring for years now, but I'm not even close to fully understanding all of it. And when you're putting all these thoughts in my head now, like it helps connect even more dots. And in the book, I do my best to explain things from my level of awareness, but inevitably there will be a book two, which I really hope will go a lot deeper into some of this stuff. And for anyone who's interested, it's Bleed Through Tales from Another Timeline. You can get it on Amazon or Kindle. And I will be working on an audio version. And I just had someone approach me today about translating it to German. So we'll see where it goes. But it's doing pretty well so far. And I'm proud of it. And here we are talking about timelines now. Hopefully the book shifted the timeline so we can start talking about this stuff.
Oh yeah, it did. That's why I was like, oh, I need to get this guy on my show. The amount of time anomaly energy coming off you is awesome. I am very impressed. Congratulations. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I read you're a timeline key holder for multiple timelines that exist that are not easily accessible. You're a timeline warrior, timeline healer, and way more that you're camouflaging right now. But looking forward to finding out more about that. I'm definitely going to having your book coming. What do you think? I would love to hear this before I like add anything. I want to hear your pure sense of what do you think how timeline physics work and time in general.
Oh man, so I mean I can only speculate on this. I don't know. As far as it's described. Well, I understand that it's all simultaneous, and I heard a phrase recently that I really liked, and we interviewed a guy, and he said, he was talking about time, and he said people think we're moving into the future, but he said we're moving into we're remembering our ancient future, meaning like the ancient past is actually the future, because that's where like we're just reconnecting with our ancient future, and I thought that was interesting. But like if as we move forward, it'll start to look like ancient times as far as these temples and these sites and these megaliths and all this stuff. According to this guy we were talking to, I found it interesting. But I guess there will be a version of the timeline that will look very much like we see in the sci-fi movies, all the flying cars and all that stuff. But I think there's going to be an element of people that choose more of an organic ascension that will take them to a much more organic timeline, right? Where this stuff is, people are tapping into these innate abilities without the need for a technological device, and that's one of the memories I had too. And I'll get to your question, but one of the things I remember us very specifically doing was when we were on these missions, I would just get down on one knee and touch a rock, and the rock is a record keeper for every moment in time that's ever happened in that specific area. So you can just connect with the consciousness of the rock, crystal, whatever it is. It can be totally insignificant. It could just be a rock on the side of the trail. And that rock is the record keeper. And you could just connect with it and have it take you back, use the rock to reconnect with a point in time in the past or the future. Yeah. So as far as understanding how time works and how I understand that it's malleable. I know the sands of time material refers to it as like a time stream with like waves. They use water analogies a lot because it's like flowing like water, and like a ripple in time is like throwing like if you create a Mandela effect, it's effectively somebody threw a pebble into a still lake somewhere, and that ripple literally is the time wave that's just constantly getting bigger and bigger, and it's altering everything that it impacts, right, energetically. So to even pretend like I understand it scientifically, I can't explain it. I feel like I understand, but I feel like I don't have the words to describe it. You know what I mean?
Beautifully put. Yeah, to touch upon what you're saying. Yeah, I like that phrase. Like the future is like the past, the ancient past, and the past is like the future. I would, in how I would currently in my mind translate that, I guess, would be that like since it's there's perspectives of ancient time and beyond time and space called the absolute in military documents, and it's as if in different perspectives, it's all like you can see it, like instead of it becoming, you can see it all at once. And then the growth of it based on choice points and potential, there a lot of the future has already been made, like the different alternate timelines and possibilities. There are ones that are more solid and solidified, and ones that are weaker in the trails and can get more solidified. And I also see like ones that are um, the ones that are more likely have more of them, a potential timeline branch off of different choice points, and then the ones that are weaker, that don't have much anchor in the moment present, will
Right.
have maybe one, or it gives a understanding of what is needed to make it. And
Right.
then the past would be like, since it's separate from us now, but what is remaining is building up the moment present. But not everything is like, like there's some
Well,
crazy shit in the past that we're disconnected from. It's like a coming out
right.
again, and like realizing, oh man, history is not what we thought it was. Maybe even it's changed and is influenceable by
Right.
us.
And a lot of, I've come across some material that says time travel hasn't even been invented yet. It's been invented in the future, but then the future time travelers came back and helped the past civilizations invent it, right? So it was actually like discovered way in the future, but they come back, and one of the things that they do is leave modern artifacts in ancient sites. So whenever somebody like an excavation and they come across like these gears or this watch looking thing or whatever that clearly looks like it shouldn't be there, that was intentionally left there by a time traveler to shift the collective consciousness and allow them to start like understanding like this is okay, something more is going on here. And the many worlds theory or interpretation of quantum mechanics it's the only thing I've come across that actually explains it scientifically in some capacity. There's a lot of fortunately for us, so the quantum field is beginning to be more widely accepted, I think, by more and more of these scientists, when before it was kind of laughed at as pseudoscience. But the way they explain superposition or the many worlds interpretation isn't as the existence of a particle, object, or world, and they use world in the definition, in more than one location simultaneously. So it's superposition. And the graphic that would be used to go along with that explanation is an infinite amount of worlds, right? You just see all these globes, right? And then you have the collapse of a waveform or single position, which is literally going from an infinite amount of possibilities and probabilities and worlds down to a single probability, down to a single reality that is created by the observer, which is the reality that we're all existing in right now. And the reality that we're creating is the single position, right? But you can tap into all those other infinite realities just by tapping into that frequency. And you might think that memory is lost forever, but it's not. All it is dialing back into that frequency. you can't remember your dream because you're not, when you wake up, you're not existing in the same frequency as the dream. But if you can get into a meditative state and reconnect with that frequency, then you'll remember your dream. The same with these other timelines. So they're all there simultaneously, but we're just on a different bandwidth when we wake up, and our observable reality is like the front reality, right? But that doesn't mean it's not branching off in a million different directions based on the choices and the actions we take every day. So, we hear Dolores Cannon talk about this. It's been talked about many times, and it's been depicted beautifully in science fiction movies, but there's a reality to it. And I think these, corporations and the military industrial complex and the private sector are well aware of this. And we have the abilities to communicate with, cross-dimensional communication, traverse dimensions and timelines, and understand that there are parallel realities out there. And sometimes I believe they're even moving assets in between, back and forth between these realities via jump rooms and portal technology. And sometimes if you're brought into a program, you're brought into a program in another reality. So when you're brought back, you're remembering something from an entirely different timeline. So it's like the perfect, like there's no security breach, right? Because when you get the memory back, it's from a different reality. So it doesn't matter if you remember it over here, because it's not a threat to the program, because the program's literally existing in another time bubble somewhere else. So, I mean, it's complicated, but.
Yeah, I agree. I love how your mind works, man. It's great. I wanted to get your perspective on, and then we can like build towards like more of the conversation on, like, I have a mapping out kind of thing I do with the realities in there's like the crazy thing going on with Earth, its purpose, the human experiment, like what's going on. It goes for days. Not even all the ETs have the full spectrum of what we are and what the thing is going on here. Earth is a jewel, the universe, crazy stuff going on here. It's like a whole hologram, dream realm, dreamscape, matrix simulation thing within matrices, within matrices of the galaxy, the solar one and the Earth one, and then her like planets having a multiple realms, like in the Tree of Yggdrasil in Norse mythology, and the nine permanent realms of Earth that's set in that. I read that Earth has billions, and all the other planets have a bunch too. And they each have different things. There's like these natural portals and stargates that can connect to them. Various races have made. There's higher dimensions is what people talk about, like in the spectrum. I mostly I like to. I found it. My guides have told me to include the dimensionality of the six directions plus the seventh being inward. Most people that when they say higher dimensions actually means going up, and also inward as the ascension would go. But there's also a downward direction that the darker forces use. These different things that have been described for the left and the right for like more of a yin and yang kind of thing, and then backward and forward having to do with the perception of time.
Right.
Then there also being these elemental dimensions that fire elementals, undine, salamanders, gnomes, all kind of things go into. The jinn have their own realm, dimensional realm kind of thing.
Yep.
Then there's this realm itself, Midgard or Earth, having its own spectrum of alternate realities and alternate timelines into itself. And then that can be applied to many other places itself. And as a multidimensional being, as humanity and the DNA human experiment of super hybrid of 10,000 plus races combined together, and all their DNA tech inherited, but also all their blocks and shit that we got to bust through. Otherwise, the body's like a paperweight, not psychically amplified.
Well,
to be able to extend ourselves into these spectrums, and the dreams or at least the different state of consciousness that we can perceive, allow us to change the antenna to for the conscious mind's perception and break out of that internal matrix. And there's like a filtering process that dreams have that sometimes clear, or at least an interpretation of what you're doing somewhere else.
Right. It's interesting though, the way you were describing that. It's exactly how I designed the cover of my book. So it's like really supposed to be like worlds within worlds within worlds. And then like these are like two different, like we can say this is Earth and this is a parallel Earth. and you just walked away. um, I think you could say this is Earth and this is a parallel Earth, like the MasterCard logo, right? And then the overlap is where the bleed through occurs, where the portals are to go from this Earth to parallel Earth. And then this would be another timeline that connects both of those Earths, right? And it's like it's just really a depiction of like the multi-dimensional reality. And then that's all existing within these other layers of reality. And it's also representing like the divine masculine and feminine energy too, which is what creates the balance in this universe anyway. So, I mean, that's kind of what the cover is supposed to be representing. Somebody said the James Bartley interview that I just did with him just came out. Yeah, I did that yesterday with him. So go check that out too.
Nice.
But this is fascinating because I'm being interviewed on these different channels, but like depending on like the interviewer, right? Like it's a completely different interview. Like with you, I feel like I'm able to just go there all the way. And I was just recently interviewed on the Jeff Mara podcast, which is going to be coming out. And like that was so surface level. Like I didn't even know how to like keep it like dialed back. You know, it was hard, but it's you know, it is what it is because that information is going to reach somebody at their level of awareness, and that's fine. But yeah, anyway, that what you were just describing was kind of the way I, you know, designed the book cover just to represent that. And I wanted it to be activating, somebody can look at it and maybe they don't even understand what it means, but they're still getting some sort of a download, right?
Yeah. And I like that you use the Vesca Pisces because like I've actually, that has come to me in the vision of when I go up to the macrocosm and check that out. Really, like the universe is like a bubble of like what's separate from other universes. And then there are a multiversal grapevine of clusters of multiverses born together under a source group. And then that there's other multiverses. And then there being a big ultra, you can call it whatever you want. I call it the ultraverse, a big bubble around that, and then a bigger bubble around that, and it keeps going up.
Right.
And like then there's this big like spectrum of what I call this space held by a micro source within all sources, like a source it requires everyone have it in their heart in order to get through, and it's like a Vesca Pisces in a bigger Vesca Pisces in a bigger Vesca Pisces.
Right, worlds within worlds. Right. Yeah.
Timeline and all that.
Right.
Beautiful. Yeah, and you go into the projects of like the SSP and my lab and military abduction for different abilities and training and breakaway civilizations and colonies on other worlds. What have you gleamed into that as well?
Yeah, so I don't have any actual memories of other world, like other planets, I would say. Like all my memories come from things on Earth, like in different factions of the military, different corporations, even like 3-letter agencies maybe. It's like everything, all the memories like are from very real, like they're all grounded in reality. You know, I do have some stuff barely some memories from the moon I don't even talk about, and then I have some stuff, you know, this life on Mars that came through a hypnosis session, but I don't include any of the hypnosis, the stuff that came through regression. I don't include any of that in the book because I like the memories. I only want to talk about the memories that came back organically on my own, that I didn't like go looking for. They just came back for me, and I feel like those are the ones that need to be shared. So and plus, you know, I still, as many hypnosis regressions I've had, it's interesting to me because I still doubt it in a sense to like yeah, it's coming out of my mouth, but am I making this up? You know, and I know I shouldn't. I should just trust it, but I don't feel like that information is relevant. I feel like the stuff that's like showing up for me naturally, that's the stuff that I feel more guided to talk about. So the stuff that is from off planet, I don't even talk about in the book because that came through regressions. And I'm like, did I make that up? Is it even real? But this other stuff is like fundamentally like, no, this happened. And I've even gone to 2 different military sites where I had the memories from and like verified, like I knew my way around. I went to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. It's a whole long story about how I even figured out that that's where I was taken, or that's where my memory was from. and it was actually by chance, by accident, but I ended up there, and I was able to, I knew my way around, and I knew, like, and I was able to verify it, and I was telling my friend who I was with, and she was kind of blown away, and that's all broken down in great detail in the book. And then another site was a Boeing facility 42 minutes from my house in Southern Illinois. I live in Missouri, but it's just right across the river. I woke up with this vivid memory of being effectively abducted. I woke up in the back of a black SUV, and there were two SUVs. I was brought to these buildings in the middle of the night, and I knew that they were in Illinois. I knew they were in Illinois. I don't know how I knew. I just knew. And through, as the universe would have it, all these synchronicities are put in your path, right? And I figured out through a very divine way that those buildings were Boeing facility, and I was like, oh yeah, those are Boeing buildings. So I was able to get on Google and look them up and find them, and they were only 42 minutes from my house because I woke up and drew them. Like, the memory was so vivid, I drew the buildings, and when I found them online and drove and found them in person, I was like, somebody has to explain this. Like, this is supposed to be buildings from my dream, right? And here they are in real life. And but the thing that was interesting about it was there was one subtle variation the way I remembered it from the way I found here, and that's what led me to the belief that, okay, this is happening like on a parallel timeline or another timeline. And the reason I came to that conclusion is from astral projecting. Like, if you ever astral projected out of your body and you leave your house and you go outside and look down on your house, things are just like subtly different. Like, there might be a bush or a tree in a place where it wouldn't be in your 3D reality, right? Like, just subtle variations that help you understand that you're in a slightly different frequency. Things are just slightly different. So in this memory, the parking lot extended between the two buildings, but when I went to the site, there was a fence and like this AC unit or something between the two buildings, and the parking lot clearly didn't go between the two buildings, but the buildings were the same, and everything else surrounding it was the way I remembered it. So I was like, either I was brought back to a time before whenever there was a road between these buildings, or this happened in another timeline. And I think the latter is more likely because of the actual experience itself that I'm not going to go into now. It's just too much, but it would lead me to believe that it was a parallel reality, right? So I like the fact that I can talk about this stuff openly with you, because I sometimes, as I say it out loud, I realize it sounds insane.
Oh no, it doesn't sound.
Well, I know it doesn't to us, but but I mean, to somebody else who doesn't believe in this.
On out with the good stuff, man. We love it.
Right.
Oh yeah, and I've had a bunch of different experience of the alternate timelines. Also gotten into I love the timeline mystery school. It's one of my favorite times. It's one of my favorite abilities. It helps so many things, and there's so many problems with time. This world, it's a giant clusterfuck of hairballs that needs to be resolved. Part of the remedy is finding when the time travel is stolen and resolving that, and then getting it out of the hands of the dark. But I'll give you an example. When I was tracking back this memory I had of like levitation at a military base in training, it went to this Montauk underground facility. It started where there was a base under DC, and they were assholes too. They didn't give a shit. If you got killed, they could just bring your body back in regeneration. So there was this big facility. It's concrete everywhere, blood stains. There's this kind of like side of the wall that has a bit of a staircase going up, and they would have you go up to the first like 7 feet up, and they'd have like this camera set up with timers to see your rate of speed you fall, and they keep telling you to jump off and slow your speed. And if you were able to slow your speed, you got rewarded with chicken nuggets, and you wouldn't be raped. And then they'd have you do that a few more times at that level, and then they'd keep having you go up another level, and then keep having you lower the amount of speed of your fall until you eventually were able to slow in it significantly and then stop yourself from falling, and then go upward, and then they would train back and forward, and then they would train racing to the other side of the big warehouse underground. Then they would have you carry objects, and then they'd have you carry people. Then they brought me to through this portal that went to a base under Montauk, but in an alternate timeline.
Right.
I was asking why they needed the alternate timeline for this. Why not just have it in the regular timeline? It appears they had a really good teacher of levitation. They didn't have that many, and he only was teaching at a certain period of time on that alternate timeline where abilities were less limited. There seems to be a bunch of crazy matrix blocks on people in this one, and they bring everyone that had amplitude for levitation there in advanced training, like avoiding things, and they would send these people to the future to swoop up people that would have died on the timeline, is what they're using it for. And so I think they're utilizing all these different timelines and alternate realities for the different rules of reality they have, the different people, the rare individuals, the circumstance there, and they're categorizing it and mapping it and then dominating it.
Right. Because, yeah, and it's the occult knowledge that they know about, and they keep it from us. It's the oldest, just a name in the game, right? But that, it was interesting. You're talking about those portals taking you to a different reality. It doesn't just take you like to Montauk, right? But it's Montauk in another timeline, other dimension, whatever. That's kind of what actually sparked this whole path for me. Carrie Cassidy interviewed this anonymous whistleblower years ago. I even tried asking her recently what the name of the guy was, and she will not tell me the guy's name. And he came on her show years ago, and he said, the Mars that people are remembering from the secret space program exists in another dimension. He was adamant that the people like the MDF and the Mars Defense Force and Ares Prime and all that stuff existed in another dimension. He was adamant that you would not go there in the third dimension and see that stuff. And he said they use jump gate technology to get there, and the one I'm aware of is underground in Texas. And I was like, that was the first time years ago I had ever even entertained the idea that this stuff was occurring in another dimension. And then we interviewed Daryl James, who talks about the same exact thing. He's like, yeah, you have to be put through a density chamber to even be brought up to fifth density to perceive the secret space program. He said it exists in fifth density, right? And he goes, you literally, it's invisible to the third dimensional beings, like all of it. He said, and primarily all the ETs that the government interacts with are fifth density beings. And he said the density chamber, he said, if you're not artificially pushed up to fifth density and you try and go through one of these portals or jump rooms, he said, you won't go through. You'll actually just like fall on the floor, and you won't be accepted because your body is not in the right frequency to even perceive the reality where that portal or that jump room takes you. So, and we're talking about something entirely different here, than just a space program. That's not even really the proper term for it.
Really good points. That goes into the dimensional and density suppression in the 3D that we have here, which I read is tons. It's like one of the most mind-controlled planets, most suppressed. It's like, why? There's a lot of reasons why, but I would love to hear what you think about it, and what do we need to break out of that, and the control matrix. Big thing I read that is because my thing is reverse engineering superhuman abilities. A lot of the low tier abilities are more easy to manifest. You got to like pretty cut and dry with a step process. The
Right.
big abilities like teleportation, which just a few have I know been able to do it. I do it in dreams. I love it. It's so good. But that those top tier abilities, they're very targeted, and there's a whole military apparatus in my lab and back and forth through the timeline matrix of control over people demonstrating these abilities, both human and ET. And that's one of the keys that needs to be resolved in order to break humanity out of this this binding of their dormant abilities that have been granted to them to change up the perception and the place on this reality. A lot of times I read people have soul family ET that comes in with them, that knows they're being born. They have them go through these different secret schools and training. And then as soon as they put them back in, they're overwhelmed with all these limitations, blocks, theft, screen memories, amnesia barriers, all this crap that like makes it so that the ETs are expecting that not a lot will just break through, but they do it just in case they do. Then there's something cool that comes along that breaks
Right.
through on them.
You know, you're talking about teleportation. What I find interesting about that is, you know, it's funny how I end up in all these situations. And I didn't include this in the book, and it's definitely going to be in book 2. But in October, I went to Sedona and I ended up staying with this guy who I didn't even know, like the person's house I was staying at. I didn't know who actually owned the house. I was just going to stay with a friend, and not even somebody I'm very close with. It was really interesting how I ended up there. And turns out the guy who lived in the house is an 85-year-old quantum physicist who worked 40 years in the private sector in the shadow government. And I tried to interview him, but he will not talk on camera. But he answered all my questions without a camera or a pencil or anything like that. So I got to interview him. I just had to remember it all. But he said he was brought into the programs to fix the dimensional shift technology that was being used at the Philadelphia experiment. He said the reason that they got frozen in the wall of the USS Eldridge into the ship is because they lacked a psychic navigator. He said you can't teleport if you can't remote view, and that was their problem. They didn't know where they were going, so they end up in a solid object. Like it's like the very first thing before you can even think about teleporting, you have to be a master remote viewer, or otherwise you'll end up in a rock. You know, you'll teleport somewhere, but if you can't see where your feet are going to land, then you're going to end up in a solid object, potentially, or 10 feet above the ground or whatever it is. And it's remote viewing to the point where like you literally you bring your consciousness so close to that frequency that you literally physically teleport there. And he said that they had to train with the Aboriginals in Africa, Easter Island, and Australia, 9 months each. And they had the Aboriginals had to teach them, our military men, how to teleport. They had to learn from them. And they couldn't basically to pass the whole training to even be brought into the official program, you had to be able to physically teleport. And he said the reason they needed to do that was because the downed UFOs that they were recovering didn't have doors, and they didn't know how to get inside. So they needed these men to be able to teleport inside, remote view and teleport inside. And that's how they even got into some of these UFOs. But he said that the Aboriginals already know this stuff. They speak telepathy on a level that we don't even comprehend, like extraterrestrial style. They use a natural portal system daily, just like the Sasquatch. Like they are so similar to the Sasquatch. They can literally phase out of existence right before your eyes. And he said he's seen them do it. And that was part of the training. They'd be walking next to one of them, and the guy would just disappear. And they know how to dimensionally shift like that. So they were able, like he had to basically learn from them how to teleport, and then he was brought into the program, and that's what part of what he did, among many other things. He was also like a caretaker for extraterrestrials. When they would come to the planet, he would spend 30 days with them, and like it's this whole crazy thing like we don't even hear talked about on the internet really. He's like some of these beings would come in from other dimensions and wouldn't have a physical form. And they would like basically choose from a library of vessels, of avatars, to what form that they wanted to take. And he said there was a literal 30-day process to where like they had to like choose this form within 30 days. And like if it had gone like once you're in that form for 30 days, you can't, there's no going back, right? So they had like 30 days to make up their mind and all this shit. But he was saying this stuff like so matter of factly, and you know who else talks about it is oh my god, Daniel Salter. He wrote Life with the Cosmos Clearance. um uh Derek and Daniel, you might know those two guys. They're going to be speaking at the Full Disclosure Now. Is their grandfather. He's the only other guy I've ever heard talk about the same thing. The very same thing. He said these beings would come here without a physical form and they would choose a body. And so they could choose to be a reptilian or a human or a Pleiadian or whatever it is, but then they would have to, because whatever they chose, they were limited to that frequency on Earth. So if they chose a reptilian form, they would have to stay underground, right? Because it's not accepted on the surface, whatever. And it's just a fascinating thing he told me that you don't think about, and among many other things. So I'm going to put a whole chapter in book 2 about everything that he told me. And I might try and reach out to him again for like a follow-up and just to clarify some stuff. But he was, teleportation was the name of the game for him. He said, you can't even, he goes, they won't even look at you as an asset for a program if you don't know how to remote view. He said that's like the number one thing they look for.
Beautiful. Thank you for bringing that up. Teleportation, one of my favorite abilities to go into it. When I go in, I have a lot of notes on it. The reverse engineering of it, everyone has the potential for it. We're like have all these super hybrid, the human DNA anyway. But there's so many blocks on it, and then the higher self doesn't want you to exactly do it unless you make a lot of buffering systems, because you could end up in a volcano or phase through a wall or something. And like you were saying, with remote viewing, that reminds me of this thing I was reading into where like ancient ship captains that were the best of the best, and some that ended up being like pirates and things, had to get a whole crew of remote viewers and psionic beings. They'd go headfirst into storms. Their ship would light up with, saying it almost fire lightning, and like the plasma all around. And if they all like did a certain thing while remote viewing in a location, they'd end up to a whole nother sea, teleported through the storm.
That's the plot of the movie, The Final Countdown, 1980. The Navy destroyer goes into a storm in the ocean, and it's sent back in time.
Oh shit, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's a if you know who John Warner is, John Warner IV, he talks on this subject. He's been interviewed probably on every podcast you've listened to. But his father was the Secretary of the Navy, John Warner, in the 70s. And when this movie came out in 1980, John Warner, his father, was no longer secretary, but he still had his clearance for the Navy. And he brought his son, John Warner IV, who we've interviewed. You've seen him on shows, I think. He brought his son to the premiere of this movie, a private screening of this movie, The Final Countdown. And he said it was full of nothing but Navy brass and admirals and top military men. And it was the Navy's, it was a recruitment film. And he said they had to bring on all the personnel to basically get a stamp of approval for this to be the next Navy recruitment film, just like Top Gun is a recruitment film, for the Air Force. I mean, that's what these films are. They're to make it look sexy and glamorous, so everybody like gets amped up from the movie, and they go sign up for the Army or whatever it is. But this was a Navy recruitment film, according to John Warner. That the whole plot of the movie is that the ship drives into a storm and time travels back in time before the attack on Pearl Harbor. And it's this whole movie about literally this ship that time travels, but it's a true story, according to John Warner. It wasn't science fiction, and that's why it was used as a recruitment film, because the people who are actually brought into the real program understand, like, this is the type of stuff we're dealing with. This is literal portal technology, time travel. This is what the Navy's involved in. Everything else is smokescreen, is smoke and mirrors, and that's like the real war. So he said that, like, if you want a true story of like our history, that movie, The Final Countdown, it's actually really good in my opinion. And understanding that it's a true story will blow your mind.
Nice. Thank you. I'll watch that. Yeah, such a fascinating topic. And like when going through the mystery school internally, and everyone can read it, we can trade later on it. wanted me to go through all the fears of like going through the chakras, going up the root chakra, the blocks, and like all the fears having to do with any time that I've done in the past and died or it ended up in a negative situation. And there's a lot of these abilities, if you're gonna manifest them here in the now and with all the center of the game, it's we have to. They're not gonna get rid of all the blocks. They're gonna keep replacing them. So we have to end up as a race becoming such resilient where we take them and like a caterpillar in a cocoon busting out and becoming a butterfly, it has to bust out itself. If it's broken open by others, it's going to be too weak to be able to have that ability, be strong enough in the environment. So it has to be strong enough by the weights itself. And we have the ability to break through that and all these psionic cocoons that we're just constantly breaking through and fall in love with that process so that it goes faster. And then it took me through all these past lives having to do with teleportation of like these mystery schools in Egypt, in this dragon family type of school martial arts place in China in the woods, and a few ET groups and underground bases where they would have like the ability passed down to them. They'd have the China one had these scrolls that had these sigils on them that linked to other realms, and I ended up like getting impatient and wanting to go travel because I would travel around a bunch in this realm and I wanted to go other places. So I ended up going to one and I didn't know the rules. So I ended up going to a quarantine realm and then having a bunch of crap come with me and then having a bunch of things shut down with it. One in Egypt, they'd find these, it's like a calling card for a place that others didn't know in sacred underground temples that they would rediscover. And they would just send people off that they trained in this to figure out what it is. And a lot of people didn't return. People died. Sometimes they come across an area and then there would be deep rewards with that. So there's like some serious teleportation things going on.
And you know what's interesting about that too is information I've kind of been tapping into lately is like a lot of the discovery of religious artifacts and certain things. Like maybe that, like what you're even finding, they're not going to be discovered because they're not even there yet. They're not even going to be placed underground or placed wherever you're going to find them until the collective is ready for them.
Right.
So like that might have been placed 2 weeks ago, and you might have think it was buried there for thousands of years, right? But it's placed in these areas so that you discover it at the right time to assist the collective into entering into the higher frequency, right, and the higher density. And like things like Oak Island, they're looking tirelessly for something. Like suddenly it's just good they're going to find it, and it's going to be in a place they thought they looked a million times because it's not even there right now. But when it's ready, when the collective is ready for it, then it'll be brought back into this reality, and then they'll dig it up, and then, oh, look, here it is. So some of these things that we're going to discover aren't even actually in the timeline yet, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I agree completely. And timeline's in flux. It's always changing.
Right.
There's a war in the future being waged in the past, and there's a lot more is changeable than we think. It's like a Schrodinger's cat box outside of what we perceive in the seen versus the unseen. The unseen is way more shiftable all the time, and that constantly happens with like quantum jumping and all this. So like I actually read that the species involved in like bringing these guys back, time travel is involved, and they're adding these objects back to make an equation for what the timeline needs to overcome like dark things. Right. This guy talks like he sends me telepathy. He might contact you in visions or something later. Right. If you want, you can trade with him. He's very powerful. They got like superpowers galore. It's a super intelligent library. It's amazing. It showed up in dreams. It like empowered my dreams with telekinesis and levitation all over. And he's helping me with DNA like crazy. I love him. They want to bring humanity to a type 5 civilization, whatever that means.
Right.
Help humanity unlock their awareness, their super intelligence, their sight, remembering, greater capacity to love. A lot of these things is a very
Well,
beautiful for humanity. It also has like a crystal collective, things that are targeting it.
yeah.
The Vatican was targeting it heavily when I first uncovered it, and then I cleared it and depossessed it a bunch.
Right. I was just gonna bring up the Vatican. So, with the Pope's passing and that whole ritual, whatever, what happened with that? There's been people tapping into, even Sol Rita, who we just interviewed. They're tapping into this vault that was opened upon the Pope's transition, but it's like an Akashic record type of library vault. It's not a physical door, right? But it's this vault that has the seed codes for the original blueprint for human DNA before it had been tampered with. And the fact that that vault is now open after the Pope has transitioned, and this seems to be the case because a number of remote viewers and psychics are looking into it. So what that means is these DNA blueprints are available now energetically for star seeds, people to receive and recollect, right? And then like they can, what it's doing is like literally taking the awakening and the ascension to the next level. And because of that, like the spiritual war is at an all-time high right now. Like every people I know, like people, the attacks are coming in tenfold because they know that these codes are up for grab now, and people are going to be receiving them and tapping into them, and they're doing everything they can at all costs to keep, like, to create these timeline trigger events to like double down on this lower timeline, so we can't, like, these codes are up for grabs. So if we start remembering who we are and reintegrating these original DNA blueprints back into our soul, then it's going to literally change the game on the planet. So they, like, at all costs, they're trying to dim the sun. I mean, they're throwing everything they got at us right now because it is 0 hour. They're fighting for everything they have ever worked for, the cabal. I mean, they're literally fighting to preserve their timeline because their entire goal is to escape death. That's why they become vampires and drink blood and do all this stuff. They think if they can escape death, they can escape karma. And they've gotten so far removed from source that they wouldn't even know the light if it showed up in their life anyway. Like, it's not, they're so far back down, they got to start from scratch basically, because of the path they chose. But either way, they're doubling down because they're fighting to preserve that. They're addicted to the pleasures of the flesh, all the stuff that comes with the third dimension, that the reality where they can thrive. They're addicted to that. They don't know any other way of life. So they're going to do whatever it takes overtly. It's not a covert war anymore. They don't care if they have to overtly rig an election to keep the Biden administration in, to keep that timeline from collapsing, because that's literally what it means. If they lose these battles, their timelines collapse, and it's endgame for them. And the whole purpose for us coming back online is to literally remember who we are and remember why we came here, and that's to create a reality where they can't exist. And they're fighting for their lives right now, and we just have to remember that, because some very negative things are happening to people, and it seems like a lot of us are under attack, and the whole purpose for that is to beat you down, so you just give up and you throw up your arms like, oh, I'm leaving the community. How many people have you seen say, I'm leaving the community, all you guys are crazy? Because they can't face themselves in the mirror. They can't handle what it actually takes to go to the next level. So it's always easier to run with the lie and face the truth. And that's what not everybody, but a lot of people are doing right now. So we have to come back online. We have to remember this stuff and bring in these other realities. And I mean, this is just the way. It's the only way. And the only way that it's ever going to make sense is having conversations like this, so we can bring it back into the collective.
Dude, I'm so impressed, dude. I like barely anyone talks about this stuff, but besides me on my shows. I'm like, oh, I gotta lower my frequency when I talk to various people. But I could just keep raising it with you. And just
Right.
that, dude, that's fucking awesome, dude. And like, I'm keep getting this like buzzing in my ear, and this guy is sending me a message. He's telling me, oh, tell him he's a yeah, he's telling me to tell you. He's like giving you a reading. Saying you have keys to vaults of like whole like things that are in safekeeping having to do with what you're talking about, these frequencies that evolve the planet like crazy, and you're holding them until the time is ready, and then you unleash them. He's also saying you're pulling all these timelines along with you wherever you go, and you're like maintaining them, and they like support this one. Then he's telling me that you're a record keeper and you have the consciousness of a galaxy. Okay, yeah. Anyway,
Okay.
that's nice.
I'll take it. Sure. Why not?
That's a nice.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He keeps buzzing me. Okay. I'll put that out for later. I gotta interview this guy. Um, my God. Thank you for bringing up all these things. Yeah, and the Vatican. Like when that thing was going on, a lot of things were going on in my world when the Pope was going through that stuff. It was crazy. That I also read because we're finding all these artifacts in different places in Mexico. When we dig them up, the Vatican is the biggest thing trying to attach to them. They're the biggest thing trying to attach to all the pyramids, the places of power, the objects of power, the people of power, Vatican. And then as soon as he went through that stuff, a lot of it just cleared. And so all these objects are much nicer and clear. And like it had all these false angels and fallen angel grids on it. It was fucked up. And so I read what you're saying. Yeah, I agree. There's like this whole big shift timeline wise, all this collapse of what happened that like went with him. So beautiful stuff. Thank you for bringing that out for people.
Yeah, of course, man. And unfortunately, I am going to have to get going here shortly. So maybe we could start wrapping this up. But I really enjoyed this today, every second of it.
Ooh, yeah, I got to have you on again. This is beautiful. I love the dimensional politics that you get into with this.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll definitely talk about more of the portals, more of your book. So, like, yeah, let's finish up on your book then. Can you bring it up for people and like just show it right in their face for people? Bleed Throughs, Tales from Another Timeline by Tyler. Get this book. It sounds amazing from this description that we just went into little bits of it. And that is a thick boy. So you got some fun ahead of you when you get that book.
Right. Yeah. It was a tall order, but I actually had them keep it this small. That's why I had to stop, because I could have just kept, stuff was coming through. I could have kept adding it, but I'm like, this is good, and I'll do a second one. But I appreciate if anyone enjoyed this conversation, grab the book, and if you enjoy the book, leave a review on Amazon. It helps the algorithm. I had we have a very loyal group of haters for Journey to Truth, and they went in and left my book like a whole bunch of 1-star reviews in a row. So I'm trying to like counter that with some real reviews. They didn't even read the book, It was an obvious attack, which I'm fine with. Whatever, that's their own karma. But so if you enjoyed the book, leave a review, please. I would truly appreciate that. And one thing I would like to mention is I'm wearing the shirt, Rebels of Disclosure. We have a conference coming up in a week, like 10 days, 12 days, something like that. 10 days away, Grafton, Illinois. It's our 4th year there. It's a disclosure event, 4 days. And we have a brilliant lineup of speakers, as always. And there's still tickets available. JourneyToTruth.online. You can find all that information, including everything that Journey to Truth does. It's just an all-in-one stop website. It has everything we do, including the books and all that stuff. And then if you can't make it in person, you can get a virtual pass. It's all professionally recorded, brought to your doorstep, and you don't have to be there live either. You get a whole recording with it. So I encourage anyone who's interested in that, grab a ticket, and we'd love to see you there.
Can you name some of the speakers that are going to be speaking there?
Yeah. So Daryl James is like the SSP guy this year, and he's going to be bringing some new information. And we have Patrick Riley. He's a 16-year combat vet in the Army. He's going to be talking about some amazing stuff. We have Laura Van Tyne, Sherry Divband, Ed Spina, Arcturus Ra, It's a very diverse crowd. I mean, I can't think of everybody off the top of my head. There's only 12 speakers. We try to do it's just one stage. We don't try to stress the schedule every day. It's very laid back, so you can actually process the information and you don't feel like it's bam, 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 speaker after speaker. Some of the conferences do that, but we're really trying to honor the actual mission and allow people to process the information and have free time and not be overwhelmed. Because it can be overwhelming when we're talking about this stuff. So, Zaysan, if anybody knows who Zaysan is, he's got one of the most incredible ET testimonies I've ever heard. And I mean that after interviewing people for 6 years. He's going to be like the keynote speaker. Lily Nova, she's going to be bringing in some Alliance updates, talking about some sacred sites. There's a great lineup. And some of the people not everyone has heard of, which is what we like to do. We like to give like first timers a chance to present, just so an opportunity to get out there and be heard. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, lovely. And yeah, send me that and I'll put it in the description. Yeah, and can you give a little like in the table of contents of your book so people can I want to read that.
You just want me to read through the table of contents?
Yeah, like what kind of subjects? Because we didn't.
Okay, I just
might do that for next show.
So some of them won't make any sense, but I'll just read them anyway. Chapter 1, the fracture. Chapter 2, lucid dreaming and astral interference. Chapter 3, Mars recruitment. Chapter 4, a visitor from inner Earth. Chapter 5, two places at once. Chapter 6, breaking free. Chapter 7, the programs, the world within the world. I really start breaking down like the programs there. Chapter 8, meeting my handler. Chapter 9, the targeting begins. And then basically 9 through 14 is this whole story of targeting and being brought into the programs and being abducted and all this stuff. And then part 2 is, then there's an interlude, which really breaks down time travel, dimensions, and parallel realities. And then part 2 is tales from another timeline. And each chapter is a different memory from a different reality. So chapter 15, Time Corporation. 16, Welcome to the Academy. 17, Dress Blues. It's a Navy memory. 18, Plucked from Existence. 19, Safe House. 20, Wingmakers in Mount Shasta. 21, A Dance with Death. And then 22 is I break down the timeline wars. It's a very long chapter about the timeline wars that we're living through right now, and I bring in real life examples of what that would look like on the world stage. So it's not just like sci-fi. I bring in actual current events that are happening, and so people can identify like what a timeline war would actually look like. And then part 3 is the hero's journey, and it talks about a 12-hour mushroom trip that I had where I literally went from the hell realm all the way to source and beyond, and I got these major downloads, and I was accessing the Akashic records. And it's just part 3 is just like part 3 is just like a mind blower. So.
Oh, that's how you got through that. That's where all those frequencies come from. I can relate, man. I went through that too. So
right.
Yeah, I'm with you, brother. Woo, love that. Definitely get that book if you can out there. That's a game changer. That's a timeline changer right there. Any other projects you got going on, events, conferences?
There's a lot in the works, but nothing really to announce yet. The next big project is a very ambitious secret space program documentary but it's going to be a lot deeper and more involved than anything that's out there. Aaron and I are the guys to do it. We've interviewed everybody, and we have our own experiences. So we're going to do it in a way that's going to bridge the gap. Even a skeptic they're going to be left with no choice but to at least consider the possibility that this stuff is real. And it's going to be a big production. It's going to be on Amazon and all that stuff. But that's next in the cards. So
lovely. And what are the platforms you're on and ways people can reach you?
Just journeytotruth.online is the website, but you can find us on Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, all the audio platforms. We have an X account, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, so you can just type in Journey to Truth basically anywhere and you'll find us.
Lovely. Awesome to hear. Yeah. And you're going to write another book, please?
Yeah, not soon, but it definitely.
Oh, lovely. Okay, cool. And we'd love to have you on again. So everyone in the comments that love this episode, show your love in the comments. Share this with 5 friends. Smash that like button. The more we see it out there, the more we want to do more of these shows. And show Tyler your love. And you go to his conference, Rebels of Disclosure. See him there. And I'm Sean Bond, Sonic League, sonicleague.com. Consultations, healings, clearings, depossession, abundance, all that kind of stuff. I'll be at the Full Disclosure Now movement.org conference in Florida and the Alien Event Conference in Las Vegas in the description. So feel free to sign those up. I'm also doing trips, Mexico, Sacred Journey, different temples, pyramids, place of power, unlock your dormant abilities. Go these ET artifacts. We know where the places are. You might be able to find them holding in your hands. So, and change your life, change your DNA, make the timeline better, help free us from these matrices. The power's in you. You're the ones we're waiting for. Any last words you want to leave our beautiful audience with?
Just don't forget to have fun, because we can take this things too seriously sometimes, because it is a war. I mean, it is a spiritual war, but don't forget to have fun, because it's those frequencies that actually usher in the higher timeline. So
True. Yeah, so see you guys later. Have a wonderful day, and see you guys in the cosmos, in the alternate timelines, in the
right,
dream world. Bye.
see you later, guys.